Reverend Hubert Dahme was born on November 3, 1867, in Nordrhein-Westfalen, Germany. He was one of the most respected and well-liked men in Bridgeport, Connecticut. The elderly Catholic priest was known as kindly, helpful, and sincerely, yet humbly, religious. In short, he appeared to be the last person in the world that anyone would like to see dead. The popular Catholic priest had been a pastor for 30 years, the last 20 of which were spent at St. Joseph's Roman Catholic Church. Father Hubert Dahme put on his coat and stepped outside for his usual evening walk in downtown Bridgeport, Connecticut. When he reached the intersection of High Street and Main Street at about 7:45 p.m., suddenly a man approached Father Dahme from behind and raised his right hand. With the muzzle close to the priest's head, he fired a shot. The shooter then turned and ran in a westerly direction along High Street and up a hill and disappeared. Dahme fell to the ground. He had been shot through the left ear with a .32 caliber revolver. He was rushed to St. Vincent's Hospital, where he died an hour later, while priests and nuns knelt reciting the litany for the dying in the corridor outside his ward. He never regained consciousness. The murder generated public interest because of Dahme's prominence, the brutality of the crime, and the public place in which the murder was carried out. A reward was offered for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the murderer. Police felt pressure to find, arrest, and convict the killer, but they couldn't obtain accurate information about exactly what had happened. Witnesses disagreed about the sequence of events. Some said that a person matching the killer's description had been seen walking with Dahme on several occasions, 7 to 10 days before the shooting. Other witnesses said they saw two men fleeing the scene of the murder in a southerly direction along Main Street. 3 witnesses walking together on High Street saw a man running away just after the shot went off. One young woman said that she heard the fatal gunshot as she drove by the spot where the murder occurred. After parking the vehicle, she ran back to see what had happened. She was nearly knocked over along the way by 2 men running in the opposite direction. The timing was such that they might have been fleeing the scene of the crime. Witnesses also varied in their descriptions of the killer, but they agreed that he was of medium build, relatively young, and wore a gray cap and a dark, 3/4 length overcoat with a velvet collar. 8 days later, on the night of February 11th, Harold Israel was walking down the street in Norwalk, Connecticut. He was from Bridgeport and was on his way to Pennsylvania to visit his father. He had arrived in town that day but had neither money nor a place to sleep. A police officer thought he was acting unusually. He picked up Israel and brought him to the police station. During a search, he found a .32 caliber revolver on him, the same type of weapon that had been used to kill Father Dahme. 4 chambers were loaded and 1 was empty. Israel was asked if he knew anything about the murder of Father Dahme. He said that he had heard about it and that 2 of his buddies were near the scene when it happened. He was convicted for carrying a concealed weapon and sent to the county jail in Bridgeport on February 12th. After he arrived there, he was taken to the police station for questioning. His interrogation began at noon on February 13th, 1924, and finally ended more than 24 hours later on February 14th at about 4 p.m. Although police did not physically assault Israel to try to obtain a confession, he was subjected to prolonged and intense questioning for hours at a time. Israel kept insisting to police that he was innocent and that he was in a movie theater at the time of the killing. He had been living on Stratford Avenue and sharing a room with his friends Charles Clint and Nick Cardello. They had met while they were stationed in Panama with the U.S. Army. The room was located above the Philadelphia Lunch restaurant. After 28 hours of police questioning, Israel, out of despair, finally confessed to killing Dahme. Once police had obtained a confession, they set about building a case. They asked Israel where they could find the cartridge for the bullet that had killed Dahme. He told them that it was in the bathroom of his rooming house. Police investigated and found one there. They assumed that it was from the gun that had fired the fatal shot. Then they took Israel in a car along the presumed course of the shooter's escape route. According to officers, he pointed out where he saw the man and 2 women on High Street and the corner where he stumbled. Witnesses were brought to the station where they identified Israel as the man they had seen running from the scene of the crime. Police believed that they now had their killer. Israel was arraigned in the city court of Bridgeport on the morning of February 15th, facing a charge of first-degree murder. Following this, police reached out to Charles J. Van Arnberg, a former employee of the Remington Arms Company with expertise in firearms and weapon manufacturing. He had previously taught marksmanship and ordnance work and was then assisting the police department in Boston. After examining Israel's revolver and the bullet that killed Dahme, he determined that Israel's gun had indeed fired the fatal shot. Next, waitress Nellie Trafton came forward. Employed at the Star restaurant located on the northwest corner of Main and Arch Streets, just a block from the murder scene, she had previously encountered Israel and his two roommates while working at Philadelphia Lunch, situated below their residence. A customer at the Star overheard her stating that she knew Israel and believed he was guilty. She recounted that he had once shown her a revolver and claimed he would use it to kill someone. Moreover, she noted seeing him walk past the restaurant approximately 5 to 10 minutes before the murder. The coroner investigating the case reviewed eyewitness accounts, ballistics evidence, and the confession. On February 25, 1924, he released a 10-point report detailing the evidence against Israel. He concluded that the police had identified Dahme's killer. The report included Trafton's statements, along with those of 8 other witnesses, descriptions of the killer wearing a gray cap and a brown overcoat, eyewitness identification of Israel at police headquarters, the signed confession, Israel's recounting of the killer's escape route, his indication of where the empty shell could be found, and the match between the fatal bullet and Israel's gun. After the coroner released his report, the seemingly strong case was handed over to the Fairfield County State's Attorney's Office. Attorney Homer Cummings believed Israel was likely guilty, but recognized that the conclusion was based largely on circumstantial evidence. To ensure accuracy, he decided to investigate the evidence himself. As Cummings later told the New York Times, "It is just as important for a state's attorney to use the great powers of his office to protect the innocent as it is to convict the guilty." Cummings interviewed key witnesses and the accused, reviewed the ballistics report, and arranged for doctors to examine Israel. The physicians concluded that Israel was in a state of high anxiety and was both physically and mentally exhausted at the time of his confession, rendering him incapable of providing a reliable statement to the police. On February 18th, after some rest, Israel retracted his confession, explaining to the doctors and Cummings that his fatigue had led him to admit to anything just to get a chance to rest, especially since evidence was piling up against him. The doctors noted that Israel had low intelligence, was docile and not prone to violence. He also exhibited a weak will and was easily influenced by others. Cummings highlighted that Israel's inconsistent statements regarding his involvement in Dahme's murder should have raised concerns among investigators. He initially denied guilt, then confessed, and ultimately recanted. The state's attorney also sought to assess the reliability of the eyewitness testimony provided to the police. One evening around 8 p.m., he and an assistant went to the street to reenact the crime. The nearest streetlight to where Dahme was shot was 50 yards away. While his assistant stood at the location of the shooting, Cummings positioned himself at the distance from which witnesses claimed to have seen the murderer flee. With the limited light available, Cummings found he could not make out the features of someone he knew well. He concluded that the witnesses would not have been able to clearly see the murderer's features from their positions. Next, they visited the Star restaurant to speak with waitress Nellie Trafton about her observations on the night of the murder. She recounted that she went to the cash register at the front of the restaurant around 7:35 p.m., approximately 10 minutes before the murder. She glanced out the window and saw Israel walk by at a leisurely pace, waving to him as he waved back. Cummings took the spot where Trafton claimed she had been standing when she saw Israel. The front of the restaurant featured 2 windows with a brightly lit area in between for displaying fruits and other items for sale. The exterior window had lettering on it, and Cummings discovered that the distortion caused by the double windows made it difficult to clearly see anyone on the sidewalk or passing by. His assistant also tried and reached the same conclusion. When Cummings learned that Trafton had applied for the reward offered for information leading to an arrest in the murder case, he concluded that she might have had a motive to be less than truthful about seeing Israel before Dahme was shot. After discrediting the confession and eyewitness accounts, Cummings turned his attention to the ballistics evidence in the case. He discovered that Israel's landlady had found another shell in the same bathroom where police had previously located the one admitted into evidence. It seemed that her tenants practiced target shooting in the woods and sometimes carelessly dropped shells, even in their bathroom. Cummings consulted 6 ballistics experts regarding the match that Van Arnberg claimed to have made between the fatal bullet and Israel's revolver. Van Arnberg based his assertion mainly on similarities between photographs of the crucial bullet and those of bullets he had test-fired from Israel's gun. However, Cummings noticed that when the images were overlaid, they did not align perfectly. The 6 ballistics experts concurred, concluding that this actually disproved Van Arnberg's claim because the grooves of the 2 bullets did not match. The fatal bullet had indentations that were absent on the bullet from Israel's gun. There was no smoking gun. If Israel wasn't at the corner of Main and High Streets at 7:45 p.m. on February 4th, 1924, when the murder took place, where was he? Israel told police that he had gone to the Empire Theater at 7 p.m. to watch a movie and left around 9 p.m. He stated that he saw 4 films: The Fighting Skipper, The Mystery Girl, The Leather Pushers, and The Ghost of the Dungeon. When Cummings asked him which film was playing when he entered, Israel replied, The Leather Pushers. He explained that he watched the last part of that film and stayed in the theater until it was shown again. The theater manager confirmed the order and timing of the films. Israel's alibi held up. If he was in the theater, he could not have been at the scene of the murder. The case went to court on May 28, 1924. Cummings spoke for 90 minutes, systematically discrediting every piece of evidence the police had presented against Israel. He also highlighted that Israel's cap was not gray, but rather a greenish-olive color. He announced that the state was dropping the charges. When he concluded his speech, the courtroom was filled with stunned silence, followed by applause from the audience. Harold Israel broke down in tears. He was a free man. Cummings realized that mistaken eyewitness accounts had initially led to Israel's imprisonment, emphasizing that eyewitness testimony is often less reliable than people might think.